Yeah.
And we have 5.
Bear with me. I'm just getting us. We are live on YouTube, I believe. Okay, I'm going to just double check for Jean Marie one more time before we proceed. And she's not here, but my guess is we'll see her soon. Okay, welcome everybody. I will call this workshop to order. This is Wednesday, January 6, 2021. This is a workshop of the Scarborough Town Council. And those present, I think we can all see on the screen those present. So without objection, I'll have Tom take attendance that way. The workshop we're looking at today has 2 parts. The first part today is there is a potential applicant for the Science Park Drive contract zone. And then the second part of today's discussion is open-ended discussion on the Innovation District for a zoning amendment requested for the CBD district in the Downs property. And with that, I think we're going to get right started to agenda item number 1, which is a Science Park Drive contract zone. Beforehand, just for our knowledge and the public's knowledge, this is actually step 0 of this. The applicant actually has not submitted an application yet. So if you look at our, excuse me one second, I'm promoting Jean Marie, and then I'm sure she'll say something. So let's just hold on one second.
For the JNC moment.
Yeah, right. Okay, we're good. Okay. Welcome, Jean Marie. So
I heard you say that, so I wasn't going to say that.
All right, well, continuing on. So this is step 0. They actually have not submitted an application. So if you look at our process for contract zoning, it's pretty lengthy. I will try to quickly, I don't want to waste too much time, but I do think it is worth quickly putting it on the screen to remind everybody our contract zone process. So give me one, bear with me here. I'm a little bit slower today than I usually am. So if we look here, step 1 for a contract zone is the applicant files an application for the contract zone with the town planner. That has not happened yet. Step 2, step 3, step 4, and I'm not going to bore us all. We can all pull this up later, but this is also for the public that might be watching. So what this is Dawn and I together, I think that it's just an effort to have the applicant gauge our initial reaction and to just make sure they don't waste time and resources on proceeding forward. And we don't feel like that the applicant's gotten a certain way down the road without us vetting it ourselves or at least discussing it. So with that being said, I apologize for the long-winded intro. Tom, I'm going to respectfully let you introduce the applicant because I'm a little bit off my game right now. So I think you have it all together.
I do. I wonder if you could promote Bob Goodrow, Robert Goodrow.
Yep.
And also Michael Tadema Weiland as well.
Yep. I will promote them both.
So while you do that, I'll just do a quick introduction. I think the chair teed it up very nicely. With these matters, there's typically 2 paths that could be considered. One would be an amendment to the zoning district. In this case, it's the BOR zone, and the other option would be a contract zone. And so I think the real issue that we're looking for feedback from council tonight is there, one, what your basic reaction to the proposal is, and 2, what would be the preferred approach? So if we can kind of circle back to that final process piece, I think it'd be really helpful. With that, I think it's best coming from the applicant. Bob Goodrow, I think, is now with us, and perhaps he can introduce himself and his project. Bob, are you there?
Hello. Somehow my video is not coming in. I don't know why. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Here, I'll ask you to start your video. That might help. So did something pop on your screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
There he is.
Good evening. Thank you for your time, first and foremost. As Tom has said, I'm the owner of Contour Properties for the Science Park Road, just in between 51 and 71. Which used to be the Conica Minolta building, and maybe more familiar with the old Blood Foundation building that we recently renovated at the end of Science Park Drive. The lot that I'm bringing forth for discussion is Lot 3, which is the darkened parking area and just a box, L-shaped box at the end of the Lot 3. That's basically 3.4 acres of land. We've owned the property and marketed this lot for about 4 years now. We've had more interest in community living organizations than anything, and we have yet to have anybody entice us. The moorings that ended up down to Scarborough Downs were the most recent. They naturally said, well, this is too much of a lift, and decided to use Scarborough Downs versus ourselves. That said, the property is adjacent to the I-295 corridor and the CMP power line and Nonsuch River, where it fits in there. It's at the end of a dead-end road. We really don't have any neighbors. There's, limited, if anything, that's of interest down there. It's just a piece of land that we'd like to utilize for some type of use. That said, we have a letter of intent from a main care provider that owns 5 other sites in the state. And the state of Maine is actually promoting expansion into southern Maine because there's not enough of a viable assisted living for moderate or low income people. We would play developer and builder. I am not associated, but I used to own a construction company called Hardy Pond Construction. I am no longer part of that, but we would build, develop, and then sell to this owner. It would be an approximately 72 unit main care facilities I speak of. I think it fits in well in this zone, even though it's not listed as an acceptable use. We're asking for information as to whether you think it's worth our while to go down that road of either a contract zone or an amended zone. We'd like to see something happen. We've not had any buyers in the last 4 years, really. So if that's of help.
Yep. Thank you, sir. So there's information in our packet. And I think we've asked a couple of questions through Tom over email, and I'll probably just repeat them right now, Bob. I think one, we're looking at a full taxpayer here. We're not looking for a CEA, correct?
It is correct. It is a full taxpayer.
And it being Maine Health, it's not exempt from paying taxes, right?
Not at all.
Okay. So that was one of, I think, Don and I's immediate question before we even came to the table today. So
understood.
Yep.
Makes sense. I
right.
do.
It's always our first question. Right?
Absolutely.
Are there any questions for Bob while he's in here? I know we've all read the packet, and does anybody have any initial thoughts or questions about what he's looking to do? Mr. Hamill?
Yep, Bob, thanks for coming and joining us. And I read the materials and like what I'm seeing and hearing from you. The only thing, I drove through the park the other day, and so maybe we could pull up that diagram again. But the only question I have is parking. So we're assuming this would be there would be residents here.
It is residents without vehicles. They're not allowed to have cars. So really you have staff parking and visitor parking.
And that 34 parking spaces, is that proposed or is that there now, the dark shaded part?
This is a wooded lot at this point in time.
Okay.
And this is truly just to throw something on a set of plans so we could have a discussion. I doubt it'll look like this in the end.
Okay. Because I drove in there the other day, and I think I was in the back parking lot of the other building, and I was just trying to figure out where it was going to be. But that was really the only question that I have.
Yeah, Don, it would be the natural extension of from where you were. It's the woods that run along the spur, if you will. So yeah, I think it's so-called Unit 2 on that diagram is the existing, formerly the Foundation for Blood Research that has been recently renovated.
Correct.
And I looked at it also from the 295 connector, actually today, heading toward Portland. And I think that isn't it kind of a butt on a power line or something like that, the back end of the property?
Yeah,
Is that,
the northerly side of the property is the pole line.
okay,
And the Nonsuch River Plaza.
okay, great. So terrific. That's very helpful. Yeah,
What
good
you see
location.
on that plan is in between the rear lot, lot 3, and the middle of that property is actually wetlands that we have been in discussion with Scarborough Land Trust for last 3 years. And we intend to donate that forward as soon as we get through planning and stuff like that. That is adjacent to some of their existing land trust land that I've given them in the past. And we own additional acreage that's not even shown on this plan that would go with it. So it actually melds their property together to be a bigger and more significant land area.
Very good. Thank you.
Jean Marie, you're on mute, Jean Marie. Oh, there you go.
Yes. Quick question maybe to Tom. Do you know why residential is not allowed in this originally, in this particular park? Anybody?
Well, I mean, the title of the zone, I think, is suggestive. It's the Business Office / Research District. And
Right.
Paul, if you want to pull up, I think part of the meeting packet has the permitted uses.
Right.
So essentially, it's all what you'd expect in terms of business and medical uses. Keep scrolling right there, B.
Right.
But
there was no particular reason of that they're like, oh no, we can't or don't want to put any residential type.
No, my recollection, this does include the so-called main med campus. So that was existing, and its future was kind of known. Most of the discussion had to do with how far the BOR would extend down toward where Mr. Goodrow owns. And I think at that time, he'd actually redeveloped the former Humpty Dumpty building into medical office suites of sorts. So it seemed to make sense. I will say, just while I'm speaking of this, one of the unique things is the BOR zone is specific to this area. It doesn't exist anywhere else.
Right.
So unlike other zone considerations, there's always a concern of unintended consequence. Though the use may work perfectly in what's being proposed here because of its location and isolation, you worry about, well, what could happen elsewhere. The beauty of this is you're looking at the entire footprint of the BOR zone. So interestingly, unlike many cases, a zone change is not an absurd question, so to speak.
Well, that's where I was going with this. I mean, I didn't know if there was some environmental reason or whatnot. And you answered, my next question was going to be, is this the only place where this zone exists?
It is, yeah.
So to me, it would be easier if we decided we thought we wanted to do that, is just to make an ordinance change, I would think, but I don't know, because of course I would encourage them to give the land to land trust regardless. So.
Well, the beauty of the contract zone is you're able to ensure that happens and happens in such a way that is acceptable. The other thing I would just mention, the test, one of the stumbling blocks for contract zone is to demonstrate public benefit.
Right, and that's why I said that. That's why I said that about, I would hope they would give the land regardless.
Well, fair enough.
Yep. Ken and then Don.
Yeah, I was wondering, what kind of businesses are in the 3 buildings that exist on that plot, Tom, do you know?
Bob owns them, so I'll let him speak to that.
So out front, it's called Elevation Center, or 71 US Front, is actually not part of the Science Park development. But Science Park does inhibit onto my Elevation Park property. And of that, there's a front lot. It used to be back in the 50s, an ice cream store that you've never seen for the last, 60, 70 years, but that's overgrown. That is a viable lot for a smaller 7,000 square foot build out. As you come up the road, there's a vacant lot on your right. On the left is the old Blood Foundation building. It's currently a medical and research site. The owner unfortunately has passed away, and that is being transitioned. And then the old Blood Foundation, or lot 2, as shown on the plan, is my 8 Science Park Drive. 6 Science Park Drive used to be the garage of the Science Park, the Blood Foundation property. So we renovated that and renovated and enlarged the old Blood Foundation building that was ineptly designed from day one. But we've made that to the Goodwill Industries is one of my tenants. SWCA is an environmental concern. Main Connection is a school, an internet school, and phone company or phone distributor companies in there as well. And we're negotiating with somebody from the lower level at this time.
So is this new building going to be exclusive assisted living, or is it going to offer other services related to that?
No, this is just an assisted living site.
Thank you.
Ken, I know you mentioned the elevation building is not part of Science Park Drive, but it is certainly the building that dominates, you know, you have to pass it. As I recall, that is dominated by medical uses. It's a women's medical focus building.
Yeah. 71 used to be the old Conum Minolta Bicknell building.
I really miss Humpty Dumpty. I know that was a little further down the road, but
and I equally own that site as well. So I've taken two very used buildings and made them into new life and new opportunities, as I did with the foundation building. So it's a creativity I have a reputation for, and I try to make the best of it. And the town has been very supportive of me, and it's a two-way street. And so the Foundation Center or the Elevation Center building actually has women's coastal health in it. They use almost 50% of the volume of the building. I have a number of nonprofits in there, and you know, it's a multi-tenanted office building basically with some medical.
thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
Part of the contract zone is we could at least demand to put the sign back, the Humpty Dumpty sign back, right? Don, I think it was you next.
Yeah, I was more of a comment than a question, but I was going to say, I know we were kind of going back and forth a little bit with Jean Marie's comments about, zone amendment versus contract zone. Even though this is the only BOR zone in town, I'm a little bit, biased in favor of, following a contract zone process. Because I think that if we were to do a zoning amendment, then if we created another BOR, then whoever that might be leads off with whatever we have amended here potentially, right? So, and maybe that's not something we want to, necessarily agree to at this point. So I just, I wanted to make that comment, offering another perspective.
Thanks, Councilor Cucci.
Yeah, I guess the way I'm looking at this is that, one, nice job, Bob, with the discussion. And it seems to be a fit with what else is going on in this zone or this area, in that it's not really purely residential, although there's subdivisions right across Route 1 that are going in that is purely residential. It seems to be a fit with the medical service area. So from my perspective, Don, that's kind of the first test that I'm trying to figure out is, does this make sense? Even though it wasn't initially contemplated with the zone, does it make sense? And on the surface, it seems to. So, but to your point of what if we expand the BOR or it makes sense to institute it elsewhere? Tom, I don't know if you can respond to this because I know it's off the cuff, but with the special uses or the special exception uses, what's the process for somebody being able to, if we identified assisted living as a special exception?
Yeah, it's additional layers of approval. Zoning Board of Appeals is involved in making that determination. So that's used fairly sparingly, but I think in certain cases it's wisely used because it's additional rigors and layers of protection, if you will. I think Jay Chase is with us. He can probably elaborate a bit more if you like. I wouldn't necessarily suggest you need that layer of protection. That's in my opinion.
Yeah, because if you want to expand the BOR, then you could address it at that time too.
Yeah, and we have any number of zones that have a suffix that go with it. It could be a BOR 1, so to speak, if you wanted to create a separate set of permitted uses.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want,
Hey, Don, just before you go, Bob and John, I'm just going to mute you guys unless you talk. There's just a little bit of feedback. So Bob, if you're addressed, you might have to unmute. And you, Tom, there's something awkward in the sound. So go ahead, Don. I'm sorry.
yeah, again, I may have jumped ahead by, going back to the zoning amendment versus contract zone topic, but I want to repeat what John and others have said. I think that what Bob has shared with us so far is very promising, and I think even at the first look at this, the first quick screen and follow-up questions, looks good. I think in a number of ways that have been touched on. One, maybe it's some solace to know that I've been looking at the permitted uses, even though what he's asking for around residential is not included. It seems consistent with a couple of things that are in there already: medical, diagnostic, and group daycare, homes exceptions. I don't know which numbers those are, but those are in there already. And so what if we did go contract zone, it seems like those would be, hopefully relatively easy hurdles. Again, I'm not, that's not necessarily my call, but that's just that's a perspective.
I'm not sure.
I apologize.
I was going to say, I'm not sure if it's helpful, but we don't characterize assisted living as residential. That may be somewhat counterintuitive. You have people that reside there, but it really has a medical and institutional flair to it. The fact that residents don't have vehicles, all meals are provided on site, so on and so forth. It really is, though people live there, it is really different than traditional residential uses.
Does it come under hospital or nursing home or?
I'm certain that there's a definition in the zoning ordinance, and I could perhaps find that as we're talking.
Hey, Tom, could I, not to bombard you with two questions at once, but is there anything, if we were just to change the zone, so to speak, is it literally just taking this list and adding assisted living to it? So it's a 2-word zone change, or is there anything else about this project that you foresee would need to have other language changed in the BOR zone?
It could be that simple. I think you could add an additional wrinkle, such as making it a special exception if you wished. But it could be that simple, to simply adding another permitted use with those 2 words.
And is there, Bob, how eager are you to give your land away? I mean, I'm just thinking, like, back to Jean Marie's point, just the series of a contract zone is a longer process, right? And I think it's pretty clear that we would expect you to, we would ask of you to make good on the land trust idea, is my guess with a contract zone. Is there, like, would that be, I guess what I'm saying is, because Jean Marie, the process of changing a zone could be a 5-week process versus a contract zone is quite lengthy, and that might be a 3-month process. Am I overstating that, Tom, or am I correct in thinking that way? Or
no, that's certainly fair.
Well,
I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not suggesting. I'm just curious about how that could work out. Sorry, Bob. Go ahead. Yeah.
The intent has always been for us to donate the land. If you were to bring up the BR zone again, that map, I'll show you another piece that's very critical that the land trust is really interested in. So up above the letters PP at the top of the orange, there's that piece along the highway that's not green. That is part of what we own. And that really solidifies the Scarborough Land Trust's ownership rights. And then it comes back into along Science Park Drive. And it really makes that parcel a very viable piece in the future. At 51 US Route 1, or the old Humpty Dumpty, I've given the land trust rights to be able to portage in and out of the Nonsuch River. So there's opportunities that I am 100% behind this. This is not something new to me. I've done this in the past, and I'll do it again.
Ken, did you have something? I feel like, did you raise your hand, Ken?
no, I was just wondering, I see you're getting clarification on land and contract zone. I just didn't know how deep we're going to go into this with the applicant on board. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think the objective is to give him guidance on if he should apply for a contract zone or a landowner initiated zoning change, because he's about to spend time and resources on it.
Right.
So I do think that we do want to give him an answer of go ahead and go apply for a contract zone, or go ahead and do a typical zoning change request. Go ahead, Ken. Yep.
I actually, my bad. I actually thought we had visitors that were going to leave, and we were going to gnaw on that and give them a result. But we can do it real time with them in front. That's fine. If we're going to open it up to either a zoning change or contract zone, if we do a zoning change, well, you know my stance on changing the zone. There's going to be a compelling reason to change the zone in the town of Scarborough. That's just the way I feel. The contract zoning fits that because the VOR does not allow this business. So this gentleman cannot do the business on that land without a contract zone. So I think that's the smartest way to do it. Again, we helter-skelter been changing zoning all over the place. I really wish we would take a deep breath and stop doing that. And really entertain a contract zone. I think this is a perfect fit for contract zone.
So I think with that comment, let's just go. Where am I going? Let's transition into actually just deciding, or at least discussing where we want to go with the advice we want to give the applicant, if everybody's okay with that. Jean Marie?
Well, I was just going to counter Ken. I mean, I absolutely get what Ken's saying, but sometimes I think our constituents get a little more wound up with contract zones, to be honest with you, than making a simple change to a zone, particularly in an area like this, where this is such a unique zone, and it's unique to one geographic part. So anyway, I was just going to throw that out there. So
Jean Marie, is it safe to say that I just want to make sure we're circling on an answer. You safe to say you'd prefer a applicant-driven zone change?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
Why not?
John, do you want to weigh in? John Clucci and then John Anderson?
Yeah, I have a similar sentiment where contract zone process it's a good process. It's well designed. I don't think this really warrants going through that. It's also resource intensive, right? It's got to go to planning board a couple of times, got to go to the council a couple of times. And there's a lot of legal work that needs to happen to put it through, when we could essentially have a 2-word amendment, like you said. And this just seems to make sense to me for the zone. So I would be supportive of an owner initiated zoning request as well.
Okay. Councilor Anderson, are you ready, or do you want
Yeah, I would just say, is there an option 3 where we can somehow simplify or streamline the contract zoning process a little bit in this case? Are there things that we could potentially waive for this case? Because again, I agree with Councilor Johnson in that we need to kind of be a little bit more principled in the zoning changes going forward, but this one does seem very straightforward and unique. And so it's just, is that even an option?
I feel like we can break our own ordinances, but I'll leave that to Tom. Because I mean, I see what you're saying. Like, can we skip step 5 and 2 or whatever it happens to be?
Yeah, is there a way to just expedite it in this case?
You can't simply choose a different process. You'd have to amend your process because it is ordinance. And I think there's actually state law that backs up much of this as well. So
Okay.
I think it is inflexible in that regard. Having said that, you could layer additional process into what seems like a fairly simple zone amendment. You could add additional layers to that. You can always make things more lengthy or than is required.
So if that's not really an option on the table, then I think for this particular case, I'd be probably more in favor of the zoning amendment, only because I do agree, I think, with what Councilor Clucci and Councilor Caterina were saying, and that it really does fit and it seems simple for this particular case.
Thank you, sir. Don?
Yeah, I am sort of lining up with being in favor of the contract zone process. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of, just how relatively easy it is, if you compare the processes for an individual to obtain a zoning amendment. And the other worry I have here is this, though this may be the only BOR zone, it is unique. It was created a certain way. So if this is going to apply to any other BORs in the future without us having, any criteria, and I know the criteria we have for the contract zone are expensive, but I think they're fair and objective. And at this point in time, given the amount of stuff that's running our way, I feel uncomfortable agreeing to a zoning amendment path on this particular project. But I'm generally in favor of everything that Bob has presented, and I can't predict the future, but I would be very supportive of this every step of the way based on what I've seen so far by following a contract zone path.
Yeah, I think I'm a little concerned that we're letting other requests cloud our thinking on this specific requests. And so I'm struggling with that. Now the other side of that for me is, Bob, I would probably put my life savings that you will donate that money, right? But donate that land. But part of our contract zone is we can legally require you to make that exchange. And it's a negotiation for us. And I think that's important that we use that mechanism when it's appropriate. And to me, I'm with John Anderson. I totally agree. If I could make this half the process, but still the process, I would. So I think I'm going to fall in line with the contract zone for simply the precedent of saying, hey, we want to do this, but we want the land donated to the Scarborough Land Trust in return. So that's where I am. Bob, I don't know you, but I trust you with my life, right? But that's what I'm concerned with. Is like, hey, this is an opportunity for us to get the Scarborough Land Trust 10 acres or what have you, plus or minus 10 acres. Let's do it in such a way that it sets the same precedent for. We went through this with Piper Shores. We ended up getting, I believe it was a lot. I don't want to misspeak, but it was 40 acres. No, not 40 acres, but it was a significant amount of acreage for Piper Shores. And that was one of the reasons why I think ultimately that had support. So I begrudgingly, I agree with the contract zone here. So that leaves us at 3-3 as far as the consensus is concerned. Anybody want to try to talk anybody off one of their positions? Jean Marie, try to convince somebody.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not going to die on this.
Yeah.
I mean, on this hill. I mean, I could go to the contract zone also for the reasons you've all elucidated. It's just that I don't know. I just like to get things done quickly, simply, if you can, if it makes sense, instead of going through all the rigmarole. Particularly as, again, this is a unique zone. And I know Mr. Hamill he's afraid we're going to create another BOR somewhere potentially. Okay, maybe not, we won't, but someday some council may, and it may make sense at that time. We don't know. I can't predict the future. But that's the reason I was saying that I would just as soon go through ordinance. And you can go just through the plain ordinance, and as Tom says, you can add some verbiage to allow a nursing home as long as they donate 10 acres to the land. I don't know if you do that, but you know what I'm saying? Anyway.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Don.
All applicants, if I just might respond to Jean Marie respectfully, I mean, all contract zone applicants are not alike. However, if we were to take this approach, any owner of a property in a BOR or any BOR could follow precisely, what we're saying here, without any requirement that there be a discussion, frankly, without any requirement other than the technical zoning requirements to go through that screen of things to consider to demonstrate the community benefit and to, for things like the land or other factors. Without that, I think we're just, we want to do the right thing and be expedient, but Jean Marie reminds me many times about how government is not necessarily, expedient for a reason. So I just,
Well, I have two things. I'm going to challenge something Don said, and then I'm going to defend my first position. So, I guess I'll leave. This is rhetorical, but do we care if assisted living is allowed in any other BOR zone? And then number two, there is ways to expedite this with a contract zone. Tonight is an example. We're having a workshop and we're getting 2 items off the plate, right? So just because a workshop is required doesn't mean it has to be a workshop where we devote our entire Wednesday to it. We can knock off 2 easy lifts. So, I mean, yes, I know that sounds a little bit weak argument wise, but there are ways to make this happen relatively smoothly. Tonight's an example. It could be a double workshop. It doesn't have to be something we labor over. So although there's 8 steps, the 8 steps could go relatively quickly. I think the reaction to this council overall is this project appears to check all the boxes. So I'm sure Don and I can usher in the quickest possible contract zone that we think could happen. But those are just some thoughts. So, Councilor Clucci, I'm sorry, I think I talked over you.
Not at all. No. I think most of us are supportive of the project, is what it sounds like, and the owner needs to initiate the request. So we're giving him some guidance, right? But I think a concern for a portion of the council sounds like, one, are we going to have assisted living facilities everywhere in town, or is there a way to restrict it to kind of just this area? And the other was that we want to make sure that land, that excess land, actually goes towards the land trust. There may be a way when you come forward, Bob, if you come forward with a request, to structure it where, this zoning request is contingent on, giving the land to the land trust is contingent. You might be able to solve both with the way you present it to us, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But there's a risk, right? Going down that path, some counselors might not quite be, fully on board of doing that. So it might be less risky to actually go the contract zone route, where we go through the full process, and we might be able to expedite it at the front end, like Paul and Don were saying. But it sounds like you have general support anyways.
Yes, thank you.
Does anybody have any parting comments? We do have 2 items tonight, and we do have 8 minutes. So just to be clear, but I'm just trying to, I know how we can talk. So I just want to make sure.
No, I'm just wondering if there's any way we could expedite the planning board process. That could be another area that could be tweaked. I just don't know if that's within the purview of the council. It should be, but.
Bob, do you think you have enough of this? Do you feel good? I mean, I agree with Clucci's assessment, I think so.
I mean, in simplicity, I know that the yin and yang here is, you get something, I'm going to give you the land. Don't worry about that.
I'm not worried. I promise I'm not worried.
That said, yes, the amendment would allow me to move this forward. There is a very dire need for appropriate assisted living in the state of Maine. And for the state to actually be promoting this is kind of, the finger on the button saying, yeah, they've got some crisis coming up with taxes and enough money and sorts, but they have a sincere need, and it would help us to be able to move this faster. That said, I'm not afraid of either one. If you're in feeling that it's an approvable project, I'd love to make it happen.
Okay. I think, any others? Any comments? So here's the good news. I think we all think it's a great idea. I think there's a clear path forward.
Well, Bob, I'm pleased to chat with you after this. I know Jay Chase has been listening to it, and certainly Michael. As was said earlier, I think it's up to you. You initiate the process either way. You can be a property owner initiated zone amendment, or it can be a contract zone. So I'm pleased to talk with you as soon as tomorrow, if that helps.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Michael, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Good night.
Have a good evening, guys.
Night, guys.
Bye.
Bob, I'm going to kick you out here, and you can.
Yep, I'm trying to leave.
Thanks, Bob.
Hey, this is why government bodies have odd number of people, right? This is Okay, we are on to the second item for the workshop tonight, which is an innovation district zoning amendment. Tom, do you want to give some background? We don't have to. I think we all know what's in front of us, but just for the public, I can play host here and show some things if you reference them. So you're on mute, Tom. Yeah,
Yep, sure. This is a property owner initiated zone amendment. There's a good segue from our prior discussion here. The request is to add warehouse and distribution as a permitted use in the innovation district at the Downs. The matter has been heard and approved through first reading, at which time there was an amendment added to that limited this new use, that being warehouse and distribution, to no more than 30% of the area. And that's where the matter sits technically. The council was quite clear and strident, as I recall, at first reading, saying that if it comes back without further changes, it doesn't stand a very good chance of success ultimately. And so I know Long Range has been consulted, and staff has worked with the developer as well. There's additional language that is being offered that does speak to the traffic creation issue that was expressed as a concern. That's the language shown in blue here. So should the council wish to consider that language, that would need to be considered as an amendment at second reading. And I think council leadership felt as though this issue needed a little more time with the council to kind of talk about it before it comes back to you in second reading. That's its next step, is to come back to you for final action.
Thanks, Tom, and I'll take it from there just to pick up on what Tom did. Yeah, that's precisely what happened. This was originally scheduled for second reading tonight, and I feel like Dawn and I both had an impression that we didn't quite have a pulse on that we had the opportunity to actually discuss this as a body publicly, and B, I think we all felt just slightly rushed I think we needed some time to process the request a little bit more. So the agenda for the next 45 minutes is wide open on purpose. I think I want to have an open conversation. I think the only thing that I would say is if somebody brings up a point, I'm going to try to follow that point instead of us kind of just stating random things. So although I don't have an agenda, if you do I know there's 2 or 3 things on people's minds. So if you bring it up, then I will follow that thread, not necessarily the person, and then we'll move on to the next concern. So with that, and secondly, there are members of the Downs crew in the audience. I am looking for this to be, if not 100% us just discussing. I mean, they're there for a resource, but we haven't had our time, so to speak. So I am considering this our time. I'm not prohibiting anybody from asking them questions, of course. But I do want you guys to know they're there, but this here is for us for the next 45 minutes. So does anybody want to lead off the conversation? Nope, there it is. Thank you, Jean Marie. Thank you.
Yes. Of course, I've been involved with this with long range planning for quite a while. And to be honest, the one thing that sticks in my throat with it is the having just set standalone warehouse and distribution. I would prefer to see any warehousing or distribution be part of whatever the business is. For example, I don't know, a brewery or developing beer or distillery or whatever, they do that and they have their office and maybe their production, but their warehousing is part of that. Or a business that does computer chips like a Abbott Labs, that if they're warehousing or distributing, they also have the labs and whatever. It's all part of the same structure, if that makes sense to folks. I'm not wild about having warehouse distribution necessarily being standalone separate buildings.
But that's precisely why they're here. What you described, Jean Marie, is currently allowed.
Right, and that's why I'm saying, and I've said that since day one. I'm still not wild about allowing just standalone warehouse distribution. So
okay, so the topic of conversation for the next few minutes will be the standalone aspect of the warehouse distribution. Okay, so Mr. Clucci.
Yeah, I agree with Jean Marie to some extent. With the previous topic, my measure is, does this make sense for the zone? And I'm leaning towards, I'm not sure that it does. And then when you kind of look through the language, it's really confusing. We're going to tie it to a subsidiary document to measure the 30%, and then we're going to try to measure. It's just confusing to me. Where I think this actually is a better use of a contract zone. If there's a client that wants to do this, and they can demonstrate that it makes sense to the area, and there's public benefit, then I think I'm having trouble being clear on. It seems like we're opening a pretty big gate, even though we're restricting it to 30%. Where I'd be much more comfortable dealing with individual situations, I guess.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So I think we have two threads which I think are related. So we have the standalone warehouse and then the notion of an individual basis approach. Mr. Hamill?
Yeah, just as a reminder, I think when this came before the council, there was a vote, and it was 6-1, and I was the only no vote. And I haven't moved off that. I've followed the language that they offered that was trying to address the warehousing issues, and I felt that fell far short of what we were looking for in terms of an amendment, not only in terms of the direction it went, but the spirit and it was far less than what I had hoped for and what I had expected from a partner. So and I think I don't want to get off on other tangents, but I would like to address at some point the issue of we created a zone specifically for certain reasons. We created a crossroads planning district. We created an innovation district within that. And I am just concerned that, the direction that this is taking, if it were to be a zoning amendment, offered by an individual, which is not really accurate here. It was offered by an individual. However, that is an entity. I've only encountered more questions and a higher level of discomfort as this has evolved.
Thank you, sir. So let's stick with notion of standalone warehousing, and Clucci has brought up the individual basis approach. Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, I would just echo and agree with what Councilor Clucci said. I'm not opposed to the concept of having warehouses there, so long as it's justified and that there's some public interest that can be justified along with it, and would probably prefer, rather than the zoning amendment approach on this one, that we go with the contract zone approach.
Okay. Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, I think you may understand where I stand on zoning. Okay, I just want to voice that developers have every right, God-given right in this country, to build whatever they want to build on property they own. I want everybody to understand that. I fervently believe that. But what it is you just got to play by the rules. And currently the rules do not allow that type of development in that district. So it leads back to we'd have to change the zoning, or similar to what John said. If something that was lucrative for the developer and thought maybe that would benefit the town, bring it forward, let's talk, and we'll support it if that's the case. Blanketing 30% of warehouse, which is really not the highest value structures, I just don't support it as requested. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Johnson brought up the issue of value, so I think that's been mentioned. So if anybody wants to discuss the issue of value. Councilor Hamill?
Yeah, sorry to jump in again, but we asked for some numbers, and I think the value that we were looking at here was somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 a square foot in terms of innovation space that would be some type of use. So I don't know that this is really going to fall in that neighborhood at all. If we're looking not at value, it's not only the captured value, but there's also an element of character that is important here. I believe in this particular part of the Downs, this innovation district, and we need to give some consideration to that. it's hard to quantify in dollars and cents, but I think that's also missing here.
Yeah, to build off Councilor Johnson's comments and Councilor Hamill's comments, you know, our side of this deal is based off the increase in the captured value of this project. And of course, the developers have the best interest because their payments are the best when they have an increased captured value. You know, we did ask the assessor today and yesterday to look at the current project of the self-storage units, and I believe that was 46. It's a prediction, so I don't want to hold him to it, but about $46 a square foot, and it's 80,000 square feet of self-storage space. Our original assumptions in our CEA agreement, our projections on the CEA are based off 50,000 square feet at $50. So to me, that project, the self-storage project, that right there it is. That meets the assumptions of the quote lower value. And so I'm concerned that if we go ahead and open up 30% to warehouse value, are we then encouraging a trend towards the lower square footage value? And you know, our end of the deal here is we want this to be a home run. And if we self-storage type deals with warehouse type deals, I'm afraid we're going to lose the innovation and we're going to lose the increased captured value that we're banking on for this to be successful for us. So my big thing is value, and so I brought that up simply as on the threat of value. Councilor Clucci and then Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, to that point, I did want to say, right, to me, balance is important, right? And I am a little intrigued about the cold storage aspect because that's a more higher end storage and probably fewer trips by nature. So I would entertain actually something that was more specific to cold storage for a zoning amendment. I think that's an interesting concept. But aside from that, I think you're right, Paul. I think that we're already shifting the mix in this area towards low value properties. And I think we need to try to balance it to what the original intent was.
Yeah. Before I go to Councilor Johnson, I agree with the cold storage aspect. I'm intrigued by it as well. It's clearly not what we're talking about right now, but I echo that. Councilor Johnson? Yeah,
well, that situation would be, again, another perfect example of a contract zone, because it would be a single instance in that district. You know, I really feel a responsibility after reading the CEA again now for the fourth time. Okay, all the incentives for the developers, which is fine, I have no resentment for, is square footage. Nothing about value. It was based on a model initially that we thought. So when there's an exception to this, I really think it's the responsibility of this council to preserve the value of the development. And that's the, yes, sir. I think Tom's going to tell me I misspoke.
No, well, I just want to be clear. Yes, you're right. Square footage matters for purposes of attaining performance standards or for performance standards, but they have a similar value matters to them because they get a percentage of the total. So the higher taxes paid, higher value, and therefore taxes paid is more money in their pocket.
They're correct. There's no argument, but an example of where my concern is this new storage that just hit the paper and bet on me on the planning board liaison and it buy me. And again, I don't resent it. Like I said, builder can build anything they want on their property as long as it's a permittable use. Mm-hmm. But that's that's 80,000 square foot. I definitely understand the developers want as much money as they can also. But that additional bonus at the end of the square footage requirements is pretty tantalizing also. And I really feel the town's going to get left holding the bag if we do not scrutinize certain things that we have control of. We have very little control over it, and that's the way it should be. But this item, we have control over.
Yeah, I just want to be make sure people appreciate what we're talking about is essentially 65 acres. It's the so-called Innovation District Development Area. And so it's 30% of that is the current is where the conversation is as we speak.
That's correct.
So I'm just trying to make sure everyone appreciates kind of the magnitude of the request at this point.
Which is significant. I mean, the innovation right now is divided into 54 lots. And I understand they're kind of virtual lots, right? They're probably not even surveyed. Maybe they are, I don't know. If you have a client come in that says, I want that lot, but I need a little bit more space, they'll just collapse another lot. That's great, plug and play. But 30% of 54 lots is 18 warehouses, in theory, keeping the numbers without crunching real numbers.
Well,
Warehouses.
yeah, I mean, it's 30% of 65 acres, so it's about just under 20 acres total. And you're right.
I'm going by the current structure of the innovation district that's being promoted, and the nice sign out in front, this 54 acres of 54 lots. 30% of 54 lots is 18 lots.
I'm just pointing out that the way this is constructed, it's 30% of 65 of acreage, not of lots.
Yeah.
And I can't speculate how many warehouses could go in 20 acres, but
I failed math because to me it's
well. Listen. We understand the point, so we'll move on from it. I think the recent transaction was 4.5 acres to put it in perspective, right? So we're looking at 18 acres, and we just saw a 4.5 acre transaction. So it's pretty easy to conceptualize. Councilor Cucci?
So this is one of the things that I was kind of struggling with is I'm not sure it's actually 65 acres, Tom. It's potentially 65 acres, right? Because the definition of the innovation district is outside of council's purview. That's something that happens at a lower level, and that's subject to amendment. So they could expand or modify the innovation district, and in effect, that would be modifying how many acres they could allocate towards warehousing and distribution. So the way it reads is really complicated, I think, to me. If I misspoke or misunderstood that, please clarify it.
well, the so-called innovation district development area is 65 acres in total, and that's what this proposal speaks to. That was created by way of their plan development approvals before the planning board. I can't speak definitively to your question of whether they can amend that in the future, and that would have other ramifications, but I suppose there's a way to guard against that. I was just trying to frame what is technically in front of you right now in terms of the confines of the request.
Oh, Don, I just muted you. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the feedback situation.
Sure.
Yep.
Is it me? Sorry.
No, it's fine. Okay, so we're hearing some common themes here. Does anything? Yep, Councilor Anderson.
Just to go back to Councilor Johnson's comment on value and how we need to kind of be stewards for value. I mean, I agree with him. I'm just wondering, I think the developers did a good case saying why this would be beneficial to them. But I don't think they've really kind of said what they would offer to the town to kind of have that fair exchange of value. And so is there an opportunity for them to go back, rethink, and come back to us with a proposal in terms of, knowing that the value might not be there, what would they be willing to exchange to get, make up for that?
Well, so a good way to do that is if you get a stud of an end user here and go through the contract zone process to prove to us that you can actually, that there is a user, because right now I think what we all have learned this past week is we don't know what their end user is, right? And so as Councilor Johnson has pointed out, they are free to get any end user they want under the rules that they have. But I think what this past week has demonstrated is that they will do precisely that, as they should, right? So what I've become gun shy of is, well, what is that first, second, or third user, right? And bring in that unicorn, that stud of a user, and front load it, and let us see what could actually happen, and then maybe have this conversation afterwards, right? But I'm not necessarily convinced that if 30% of the innovation districts is allowed for warehousing, that we're going to get above a 50 square foot or a 40 square foot building. There's no evidence to show that we would. In fact, there's one would maybe suggest that we just received evidence to the contrary, and I think that's where I am. Councilor Hamel.
Yeah, I'm going to build on that a little bit. we've had conversations and we've asked for some idea about what sort of things they're talking about. We've asked for examples of even if they didn't want to name who was possibly in the queue, that failed. We asked them to point out examples of where this was in practice, either in Scarborough or in the area, that failed. And then a week before we were hosted to go on a walkthrough of the Downs, this 80,000 square foot storage facility was breaking ground based on a news story in Main Biz. So that's to me is very disappointing. And regardless of what we're talking about, the idea that we have to find out in that manner about one of the major developments in the Downs, I think is just simply unacceptable.
Are there any other comments? Tom?
Yeah, I don't misunderstand me. I'm not advocating for the developer, but I'm repeating what I've heard them say to your point, Mr. Chairman, regarding contract zone. As I think we've all acknowledged even this evening, we move slow, and that might be a 6-month process. And what they've said is that is problematic in making real estate transactions happen when there's a front-loaded legislative process that needs to happen. Again, don't misconstrue my point. That's just what I've heard them say publicly and privately, that those sorts of front-end additional requirements are very difficult to make deals happen.
I'd like to get a vaccine too, but.
Yeah, I just want to point out, we are, and we haven't had the review of these yet, but I know we've gone to great lengths to try to expedite activities for the Downs, and that includes planning board process. We've doubled meetings. We've even right now haven't reviewed this yet, but there is in place, or soon to be put in place, a way to expedite certain aspects of what goes through the planning board process. So there are a number of things we've done and hopefully can continue to do. So I'm having a little hard time with this in terms of the speed and the pipeline. And we know the issues are pace and intensity of development, not necessarily sheer numbers. And we still haven't had the chance to get our arms around all of that yet. So timing is everything.
Any other thoughts? Okay, I cannot close the YouTube stream, so I will stay in here, but I believe without objection, we will essentially recess until 7 o'clock. We cannot start the meeting until 7. So we do have a 27-minute break. So we will meet back here at 7 o'clock. And actually, before I do that, actually, it is a workshop. So if there's any public comment, I don't want to just end on that. So. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my camera video. You guys can log off and re-log on if you want to, but I will be staying in here.
So Paul.
Oh, yep, I'm here. Yep.
So we don't. This is not a new link, right?
No, this has to stay.
Shut off my video.
YouTube will get confused.
Gotcha.
No new link. So you might as well.
I just need to know where I'm supposed to go. That's all. All right. Thank you.
Paul, there was a hand raised in the attendees. I don't know if you missed it. It came in as we were leaving.
Well, hold on. I don't want to be disrespectful to Peter here, since there's only me and you sitting in this.
Yeah,
so
it looks like John.
Peter, hold that thought for a second.
No, I'm back.
Well, I think you have 5 of us, so I think that's enough to make the comment, Peter.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. We do need to comment. I appreciate the points and certainly have respect for all of you. We appreciate the contract zone logic. That gives us, something. The point I want to make is I have 3 points. On the contract zone, component, I just think that in the business world, the timing in which it takes and a process to go through doesn't allow us to compete with other communities. I consider that a best efforts issue. Second point is, we've given you all these facts. We've given you the numbers. We've shown you proof by your own tax assessor that we're up over $100 a foot on our forecasting. I don't hear Councilor Hamel talking about the ones that are over $100, only the ones that are under. We work on aggregate. I don't appreciate those comments. I find those inappropriate, very inappropriate. Third thing, we don't believe you're using your best efforts on our behalf because we've given you the proof through your own tax assessing component. That's all I have. Thank you.
And Peter, I'm going to treat that as a public comment because I don't think it'll be productive to respond to any of that. So with
Good
that,
enough.
we will see everybody at 7.
Mr. Ken, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
Good.
We live in interesting times.
We certainly do.
Who said that? Who said that?
Some Chinese philosopher many moons ago.
Confucius?
I don't know if it was him or not, but I remember it being a change management seminar quote on every single one of those you go to. Makes you want to get in a time machine and go back and choke that person. Yeah, I mean, those photos were unbelievable.
Yeah. Hey,
Hey,
All right, so listen, Hamill, you're gonna make a motion to adjourn at 7:50 if we're not done. So
okay. You can count on me for that.
yeah. So no new business shall be taken up past 7:20.
Nice. I like that rule a lot. It's good for old guys. I start nodding off around 9 anyway. So
John, do you have anything written down for the appointment stuff, or?
I do.
It's okay. You don't have to. I don't have to share it on the screen. It's fine.
No, I have my notes here. So, and we've had 40 appointments, and still 20 vacancies after those appointments. So it's a big number.
we're not doing anything on that tonight, correct?
We're doing the first posting. I'm going to read them into the record, and then at the next meeting, we will have a second reading and a vote.
I don't see that on the agenda.
It's not. We read it into the agenda. I normally do it during committee meetings. We're going to make an adjustment to the agenda to do that.
Do we take a vote on the adjustment to the agenda?
Yep. It has to be 5.
Yes.
Good.
Or I guess at this point, 4 would be a
40 names you're gonna read?
But you don't know, he's going to just read them during his update at the end of the meeting.
By then, everyone will be gone. Yeah, if you don't vote in favor of the motion, I'll just read them at the end and hold you till past 7:50. So you pick, you know. And even when we have hard copy, when we'll be reviewing it, we still read through them. So.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Wednesday, January 6, 2021 regular town council meeting of the Scarborough, Maine Town Council. First item up is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I like how everybody was on mute there, so it was only me.
It's less feedback that way. Sounds better.
Sounds better.
Cacophony.
Tony, roll call.
Counselor Cucci,
Here.
Counselor Anderson,
Here.
Counselor Katarina,
Here.
Counselor Johnson, Counselor Hamel,
Here.
and Chairman Johnson.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 4 is general public comments. There's a few people in the audience. Does anybody like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none. Item number 5 is approval of the minutes of the December 16th, 2020 Town Council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes,
Chairman Johnson.
Yes. Item number 7's treasurer's warrants. I have signed everything I need to, I believe. Item number 8 is the town manager's. Oh, I'm sorry. Item number 6, adjustments to the agenda. I'm sorry, Councilor Hamel.
yes, I'd like to make a motion to make an adjustment to the agenda. We have some appointments this evening, which I'd like to read into the record for first posting. And I propose that we do that at the top of the order for new business rather than during the typical spot, which is during councilor and standing committee updates.
Good. And does that have an order number, Tony, or does it need to? Okay. So is there a second?
A second.
Discussion? Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
okay, Counselor Hamel,
Yes,
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 6 is, item number 8 is the town manager's report. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple quick updates. Purchase of Aldr Hall. This is the former Grange Hall, most recently the Masonic Lodge. We are destined to close on that purchase this Friday, January 8th. We've done all of our due diligence, secured title insurance. I did a final walkthrough today. I will mention, well, first the numbers. The final purchase price or proceeds I need to bring to the table are $356,850.67. In addition to that, there's a $10,000 deposit that will go toward the proceeds. So I'm working well within the authority granted to me by council. That leaves, for anyone keeping track at home, just over $28,000 to secure the exterior improvements that I was authorized to do beyond that. Weather permitting, we'll certainly do that as soon as we can. Again, those will be limited to those exterior items. And then perhaps as soon as the budget time, there'll be discussion around further improvements, but that may even be delayed a year, frankly. So thank you for that. I will mention they have left a number of items, contents in the structure. Some of them have historical significance. And in fact, the Historical Society has not formally, but mentioned interest in a number of benches. These are long benches that were from the former Grange. We'll take this matter up in the future, but we could do something like a permanent loan if we didn't want to, gift those to the society. But I think they would be the natural repository for something like that. They've expressed interest in putting them up at the old schoolhouse on Holmes Road, which might be a really appropriate use. There's other items related to the kitchen, certainly all the appliances, but dishes and kitchen equipment. But there is certainly some junk as well. I say junk, but things that we really don't have value for. To make this closing happen on schedule, they agreed, I should say, for an extra $600 so we can dispose of any items that we find that just aren't of any use for us. So very pleased that we've been able to move this forward and close this in such a brisk order. So appreciate your support. I also want to provide an update on the vaccine administration. As I reported at the last meeting, Scarborough is one of 3 EMS providers in Cumberland County that have agreed to assist in this first wave, essentially for first responders. This is not to be confused with the priority list necessarily CDC has put together in the state of Maine, but within this first responder group, and that's all we're currently thinking about, are EMS, fire, police, and dispatch. And the state has further broken out this first responder group into a 1A and a 1B. So as of tonight, all licensed EMS providers in the county will be done, at least those that we're responsible for. And then probably over the next couple of weeks, the other members, that's fire, police, and dispatch, that's a larger group, will be done. Keep in mind, of course, some in the 1A will be eligible for their second shot in about 2 weeks from now. So it's going to get quite busy, but I'm pleased to report we've had no issues staffing that with our trained staff. The state has stepped up and done all the scheduling for us, and the billing is going quite well. So all in all, we're pleased. In some cases, we're having folks come here to our facility. In other cases, when it makes sense, we're going out to different communities. In fact, tonight we're in North Yarmouth and dealing with probably 4 different communities at one location there. So it's a bit of a hybrid approach, but we're pleased with the way it's going at this point. In terms of kind of COVID concerns and how it affects town operations, I think we're all paying close attention to what's happening in our state and our country and our world for that matter. Case counts continue to be very high, certainly comparatively for us from what we experienced in any of the months leading up to now. That certainly is cause for concern. And so I assure you, I'm paying very close attention to in monitoring our operations and constantly modifying things to make sure our staff and our residents are safe. I thought it'd be helpful to perhaps just brief you on what protocols are in place. I guess the other preface I'll provide here is that a number of communities have taken a precautionary step of closing for 2 or 3 weeks. South Portland and Gardner come to mind. There's other communities, I think Biddeford and York, that have closed because of a particular outbreak or incident, but they're not closed. They're closed related to that, but they intend to reopen when the concern passes. And also our own library has taken a bit of a precautionary step and done takeout curbside only. But the sort of protocols that we've had in place for some time now, and I'll kind of go by function, it might be more helpful. Certainly face coverings and physical distance are standard across all of our operations. It means different things in different operations, particularly from a physical distance component in terms of crews riding in the same vehicle and working in the same space. But for public safety, dispatch continues to be on lockdown. They have been since this started in March. That's highly secure and has been and will continue to be. The lobby of the public safety building is open to the public. By its design, it is kind of structured such that the lobby is the only place that is accessible. So for all intents and purposes, folks are only permitted in by invitation. They're trying to do everything as remote as possible, such as daily briefings with patrol shifts are done remotely when they can. Any direct contact in terms of making an arrest, they are donning N95 masks and goggles. So anytime we're in very close contact, certainly even traffic stops, face coverings are in place. With respect to public works, we've instituted staggered shifts. And by that, I mean, half the crew comes in at 7, the other half at 7:30. We have 2 different locker rooms that they use. Again, all of this is designed to keep people as separate as possible and distance. From an operations point of view, the good news is our crews are assigned a vehicle. So there really is not the occasion for folks to be swapping in and out of vehicles. There are occasions where they have to ride together and we make accommodations as we can. And the same is true on the vehicle maintenance side. We're trying to keep folks as separate as possible. Community service, we are doing things by appointment for passport services. As you might expect, that's not in high demand right now, but that is available by appointment. The hybrid daycare that we are running, certainly members of the public, I say that, the students are coming on a daily basis, but it's not open to the public. Someone can't walk in the front door. And so we're doing our best to minimize the duration between direct interaction with students. That is difficult. We're dealing with some as young as 5 and 6 and all the way up through middle school. But so far so good. We've had a couple of incidents, but we've been able to deal with them quite effectively and safely. And then with respect to town hall, we continue to be open to the public. I will say since the election, and Tody can attest to this, it is eerily quiet. And clearly that's a demonstration that our residents are being cautious themselves, are availing themselves of online resources, I presume. But for those that come in, we have a strict face covering mandate. Certainly all staff is adhering to that. And I've paid very close attention on a daily basis, asked staff what their level of comfort is. And really what it comes down to, I think we've got good solid protocols in place at this point, in spite of the fact that we do have continuing case counts. I don't see the need to close to town hall to the public at this point. In fact, we're taking some overflow. It's not something we can't handle from other communities that have closed. And we're dealing with those. We'll do some public safety announcements, public announcements, I should say. For instance, we're not able to register cars for someone that doesn't live in our community. We can do other functions, but not those functions. So, the real assessment is our vulnerability, I don't think is in the workplace. I think given the protocols we have in place and everyone really taking it seriously, including the public, my biggest concern is off-duty lives and what are people doing when they're not here with us and what they bring back to us. Again, history suggests that they're behaving well outside of work too. They're not bringing it in, but that's my biggest concern. I think that's where we're seeing it, this so-called community spread occur outside the confines of a kind of a structured work environment. So that's a long-winded way of saying that I'm acutely aware of the concern. I'm monitoring it daily, but at this juncture, I really do not see the need to change operations at this point. Subject to change, of course. But that's certainly something that's been noteworthy and newsworthy and will be a continued discussion, no doubt. I did receive an update on the Beech Schoolhouse. I think Councillor Gleistein had asked for an update. I have a written update. I'll provide that to you. I believe folks from the Historical Society would be willing to attend a meeting in the future if you wish to have them present and be available for questions. But essentially, the upshot is our money has nearly been spent for all the intended purposes. And I think it probably would be best to have someone here to be able to answer your questions in terms of what their future intended use of the facility are and the like. Also, for the public, I've made the council aware. We've re-engaged with the school department a discussion of the turf and track project. This is a project, the need doesn't go away. We've had a bit of a reprieve with high school sports in particular being on a hiatus fairly significantly over the fall, and it looks as though that will carry probably through the spring as well. But the condition of the turf in particular, it's not repairing itself. So this is something that I'm going to encourage the school to really step up and take the leadership position on. After all, 98% of the use is theirs, and so they really are the entity with the vested interest. That's not to say we're abandoning this. We want to do our part to help support, but I think they can be the strongest advocates because at the end of the day, they're the ones that have the most at stake here. Although it really technically has budget authority granted by a prior council, I think given the passage of time, it's probably best to bring this back through the formal budget process. So my intent is to, hopefully you'll see this in one shape or another and from the school's side of their CIP as soon as this next budget discussion. And lastly, just want to mention that the ad hoc committees will be kicking off. Our first downtown committee meeting is tomorrow evening at 6:30. Councilors Clucci and Anderson are the liaisons. We had a quick chat last night just to kind of prep for that. Really excited about getting that process started. And then the charter review effort will get underway next Tuesday. That's January 12th, again at 6:30. And Jean Marie and Betsy are the council liaisons. I'll be sending out a communication just so we can kind of coordinate ourselves for that initial meeting until they get themselves organized. And I guess the last thing, I would encourage the council and the public to look at the most recent town council chairs report. That really gives a good overview over the next 2 months or so, January and into mid-February. And your agenda is packing in there pretty well. Most notably, just remind you all that you have a goal setting session on January 16th. And that's a Saturday morning. I don't know if we designated a time yet, Paul.
9. Let's do
9
9.
o'clock.
9. Yeah.
9 o'clock. And I suppose that's going to be a virtual event at this point?
Yeah, I think so. We'll
Okay.
see if maybe I'll be in the mood for coffee, hang around chambers. I don't know. But yeah, let's call it virtual.
All right. Well, we'll talk about those
I was
details.
gonna say, I won't be there.
Yeah. Now I know you won't be there. I might want to get out of the house. That's all.
So we'll talk about those details, but that's just such an oddball meeting. I want to make sure people had that on their schedules, and it has been rescheduled. It was originally for this coming Saturday. So again, the 16th, 9 o'clock a.m. here at Town Hall, or remotely as you wish. So with that, I'm available for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Tom, I think you went about 6 minutes over your time.
I know.
So, are there any no, I kid. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. No, Clucci, Councilor Clucci.
I don't usually have questions for Tom, but it happens my sister's a pharmacist, and I was talking to her today about vaccine administration, and she was telling me about they're doing clinics for long-term care facilities right now, and in order to make sure that, like the Pfizer vaccine, for example, if you don't use it right away, you got to throw it away. So they bring what's left over from their clinics back to the Walgreens, and that's what they use for the store personnel or the pharmacists or front end workers there. Just wondering if you had if we have any if we consider that, I guess, in our distribution, where if there's leftover vaccine doses that we have a protocol in place for using them somehow.
Yeah, I don't intend to criticize the vaccine rollout, but it's coming much slower than is expected and was promised, frankly. And I don't know where to lay blame, whether it's some sort of supply chain logistical bottleneck at this point. So we have not been confronted. We've had no additional doses, so to speak. And if we do, we have still many folks in that first priority list that will receive those vaccines. I'm glad you mentioned this because we've received a number of calls from the community asking questions about where they sit into the priority list. And we sent a social media message out yesterday. We don't dictate that. We are simply a provider in this system, but we're not the one determining who gets vaccines when. I did incidentally hear or see a headline this afternoon that in the event there are extra doses, those are in some cases being given out to the general public so as not to have them spoil. But again, we've not experienced that yet.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Tom. Very informative. Seeing none, we are on to order number 21001, which is a 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the following new request for a food handler's license. Claire Stretch, DBA All Kind LLC, and DBA The Processor LLC. Both businesses are located at 71 Pleasant Hill Road. And Shake and Baked Kitchen LLC, located at 3 Commercial Road. Tody, do you have anything to add to this?
No, there is the regular process for anyone who's applying for a food handler's licenses. They had been before us for marijuana establishment licenses. They're going to have product that will be consumed by the public, which requires a food handler's license from the town.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Tody, you want to call the vote?
Councillor Clucci,
Yes.
Councillor Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Katerina,
Yes.
Councillor Johnson,
Yes.
and Councillor Hamel.
Yes,
Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. It was unanimous.
Order number 21002 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the following new request for a marijuana establishment license, which is Shake and Baked Kitchen LLC, located at 3 Commercial Road, for a medical marijuana products manufacturing facility and an adult use marijuana products manufacturing facility. Liam, would you like to give us a quick update here? I'm going to pull you in.
Liam, I took some of your time, so be thoughtful in your comments.
Fair enough. Just quickly, this one is a bit unique in that It is it's a request for action and or a public hearing and action in the same meeting. Just a brief background, I think the chair can probably fill it in where I'm lacking. This is an entity in a location that we previously licensed, actually in batch 1 under the High Test Laboratory LLC. The distinction here is that Office of Marijuana Policy has required this entity to obtain 2, in essence 4, but 2 separate manufacturing licenses, one for their laboratory operations, which is High Test Lab, and another for their baked goods, confections, edible marijuana products. So that's why they're coming forward now with this request. We evaluated and inspected all of these areas when we initially licensed them. Essentially, it's an OMP distinction, which is require them to obtain 2 new licenses for manufacturing.
Thanks, Liam. And I'll just add to it. Yeah, Liam first came to Dawn and I just to run this by us because it goes with public hearing and action. We've already, the main entity, so to speak, we've already had a public hearing and an action in the typical order. And essentially the Office of Marijuana, OMB, Office of Marijuana
Policy,
OMP, yep. Essentially has him chop up his facility because some of it's growing, some of it's testing, some of it's cooking and making. Councilor Johnson and I have personally been through this facility. So I was comfortable doing this, because it's going through the process. It's the same establishment under the same roof, so to speak. He is just being asked to sector this off. So just to add to Liam's thoughts. So is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Johnson? You're on mute. You're on mute, Ken.
I was trying to find a picture of the facility. Somebody that was with me at the facility was wearing a hazard suit. And I took a picture of it. That's great. I was going to try to find it and show it to you, but
well, I'm glad you couldn't find it, so I appreciate that. I
no,
think
it's
that's
actually a very impressive facility. The proprietor is a very professional, articulate young man. He gave us a tour, learned a lot about the industry. You could just sense the security. I mean, there are cameras everywhere. There are keypad entries into certain rooms. It was pretty impressive. And like I said, we actually had to don a hazard suit with booties. So to keep everything clean. So I feel very comfortable in doing this in one fell swoop. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, just it's more of an FYI kind of related to this to some extent that I haven't really had time to dig into, but I saw something from the state recently around changing medical marijuana regulations. And so I just don't know how or if that has any impact on our particular ordinance and how that might impact decisions going forward. I haven't had a chance to dig into it, but I recall seeing it in the news this morning.
I talked to Liam this morning about that, Jonathan, so we're on top of that.
Okay.
Thanks.
And that's driven, I think, by the marijuana industry, correct? Thank you, Councilor Johnson. I'm going to start wearing that to these meetings. Okay, are there any other comments, questions? Okay, Tony, you want to take a vote?
Councilor Clucci?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Councilor Katarina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. That was unanimous.
Old business, order number 2116 is an act on new request for the following marijuana establishment licenses. Sands Family Partners LLC located at 137 Pleasant Hill Road for adult use medical marijuana cultivation license and an adult use marijuana manufacturing license. So these guys have already had their public hearing, and I believe this is our action. Liam, do you have anything to add to it before?
Yeah, no, just again, this is a continuation of an entity that's been licensed previously for medical cultivation under the Derigo Enterprise LLC. So I think it does represent a slight expansion of cultivation area and a new manufacturing license, but they have been inspected for a second time by the team last week, and I do not believe there are any concerns.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
In a second,
Second.
discussion? No, just one quick discussion that it's not quite related to this, but I think there's been some good ideas over, a couple of people have mentioned over email. I think we should sit down and maybe brainstorm just a way to educate the public graphically on some of this stuff. We had, I think, Liam, I don't know, it was you that actually produced the lab map, but I'm going to give you credit for it. There's a map publicly available that shows the cultivation areas. I think anything that we can boil this down to a little bit simpler visual aids for the public would be good. I mean, we've mentioned through this whole process, sometimes it feels like there's 5 new places and it's really 2, by the time we're done. So anything we can do when we're done, which I think we are almost at the light at the end of the tunnel here, I think that'd be helpful. So.
Yep. Micah Warnock deserves credit for that.
Yes. Well, thank you, Micah Warnock. Much appreciated. Okay, Tody, you want to take the vote?
Councilor Clucci,
Yes.
Councilor Anderson,
Yes.
Councilor Caterina,
Yes.
Councilor Johnson,
Yes.
Councilor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Order number Don Hamill is a request from Don Hamill. Mr. Hamill?
Thank you very much. Thank you. On behalf of the Appointments and Negotiations Committee, we would like to post some names this evening for positions on various town committees with final approval on Wednesday, January 20th. And I want to in particular thank Tody and Liam Gallagher and Tom for their support in making it possible for us to be able to get these folks appointed in the month of January. There are some 40 appointments I'm going to read through. I'll try to go quickly, but even so, there are 20 vacancies that remain, and we'll be posting these and also posting the vacancies to the committee site on the website, town website. So for the Board of Assessment Review, we'd like to reappoint Christopher Herrick as a full voting member with a term to expire in 2023. For Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee, reappoint Liam Erickson as a full voting member with a term to expire in 2023. Appoint Kevin Ferry as a first alternate with a term to expire in 2023. For Community Services and Recreation Advisory Board, to appoint Patricia Brigham as a full voting member and Karen Shupe as a first alternate, both with terms to expire in 2023. Conservation Commission, to reappoint Suzanne Nixon as a full voting member with a term to expire in 2023, and to appoint Emily Spring as a full voting member to fill a term to expire in 2021. For Historic Preservation Implementation Committee, to reappoint Craig Friedrich and Jessica Holbrook as full voting members, both with terms to expire 2023. For Housing Alliance, to reappoint Marjorie DeSanctis as a full voting member with a term to expire in 2023. To appoint Philip Dick LaRue Jr. as full voting member with a term to expire in 2023. To appoint Michaela Sargent as a full voting member to fill a term to expire in 2021. For the Long Range Planning Committee, to reappoint Richard Chenet and Alan Paul as full voting members with terms to expire in 2022. And we wish to appoint Peter Freilinger and Marvin Gates as full voting members with terms to expire in 2023. Parks and Conservation Land Board, to reappoint Sean Flaherty, Richard Murphy, and Jane Palmer as full voting members, all with terms expiring 2023. For Personnel Appeals Board, to reappoint Jennifer Beatty as full voting member with a term to expire 2023, to appoint Denise Smith as a full voting member and Peter Freilinger as a first alternate, both with terms expiring 2023. For Planning Board, to reappoint Roger Bealey as a full voting member with term to expire 2023, and Rick Dupierre as a first alternate with a term to expire 2023. To move Rick Meinking from second alternate to a full voting member to a term expiring 2022, to appoint Russell Scudder as second alternate to fill a term to expire in 2021. Only 5 more. Senior Advisory, to reappoint Anne Marie Bailey and Kenneth Simons as full voting members with a term to expire 2023. Moving Denise Smith from first alternate to a full voting member with a term to expire 2023. To appoint Alan Foster as first alternate to fill a term expiring 2021. For Shellfish Conservation Commission, to reappoint Will Hamill and Nathan Orff as full voting members with terms to expire 2023. To appoint Robert Willett as a full voting member, term expiring 2023. To appoint Noah Nygren as a first alternate for a term expiring 2022. For Sustainability Committee, reappoint J. Anton Bodar as full voting member with a term to expire 2023. Move Ronald Allen from first alternate to a full voting member with a term to expire 2021. For Transportation Committee, move Katie Fellows from first alternate to a full voting member, term expiring 2023. And they have a long-range planning committee representative, which will be nominated at its next meeting. Zoning Board of Appeals, reappoint Rudy Karen as a full voting member with a term to expire 2023. To move Alton Chip Howe from first alternate to a full voting member, term expiring 2022. To appoint Peter Freilinger as first alternate with a term to expire 2023, and Alan Foster as second alternate to fill a term to expire in 2023. And that concludes the appointments for this evening.
Thank you. Is
Thank
there
you.
a second?
You need a second?
I think so. No, I don't. Okay.
No.
Am I voting, Tony? No.
No, these names are posted this evening. They'll be voted on at the next meeting on the
Okay.
20th.
All right, thank you. Sorry. Order number 21003 is a first reading and schedule a public hearing on the proposed amendments to Chapter 303, the Town of Scarborough Personnel Ordinance, Section 507, vacation, and adding Section 508, earned paid leave for part-time employees. Liam, did you want me to share the screen or anything, or?
No, I don't think so. I can,
Okay.
I can give it a motion.
Go ahead.
So, as a memorandum, which I guess I just suggest you don't share, it's in the packet, kind of articulated, this was a change to state law that actually happened in 2019 with an effective date of January 1, 2021. Essentially, it was a mandate for all employers of some size, 10 or more employees, to provide earned paid leave off to part-time, all employees, but I think specifically part-time employees in the aggregate or the accrual of 1 hour for every 40 hours worked, up to a maximum of 40 hours in a 12-month period. So obviously there will be an impact to the fairly large employee population we have. I know that in discussion with leadership, there was some question about what the financial implications would be. In the memorandum, I suggested we had quite a lot of part-time hours worked, roughly 100,000 over the course of a 12-month period, which would amount to, if they were all eligible, and again, there's some caveats for those who would not be, it'd be essentially 2,500 hours of earned paid leave that we'd be obligated to provide to part-time staff. Those who are excluded are seasonal staff, are not eligible, employees who have an employment duration of less than 120 days. But this is not a voluntary choice it's a mandate. So this is really about housekeeping and incorporating into our personnel ordinance, which is an appropriate place for it. You will see that there are some changes to 507, which is the existing policy for vacation leave for full-time employees. Just briefly summarize it. It's essentially spelling out that there's 40 hours of vacation leave that full-time employees can use for, under the guidelines of this act. And then the only other change to that is really front loading the accrual, as opposed to, currently you earn your accrual at the end of the month in which you worked a period of time. And this essentially will be afforded to people at the beginning of the month. Again, it's more of a procedural change, but it allows us to comply with the act. So it's certainly not insignificant. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of, we don't have a lot of options as an employer. Not to say we aren't supportive of generous benefits for our staff, but it's more of a technicality.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Liam? Council Hamill?
Yeah, it wasn't a question, but just a comment. I want to thank Liam for, his heads up, move on this. I got an alert on my phone today reminding all employers, I must be on an HR guide distribution list, but that this law is in effect. So, Liam was ahead of the curve, and I said, hey, we've got it on our agenda for the evening. So thanks for that. And I think this is something that, we hear some kind of pushback on this, but it is something that really does take into account that we have a large number of people that are working, as as part-timers, and they need some level of benefits.
Thank you, sir. Anybody want to make a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any further comments? Councilor Katarina?
Yeah, just so folks will know, this was sponsored by Rebecca Millette when she was one of our state senators from Scarborough. So
Good.
that's it.
Yep. Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, I know that the library also has updated their policy to reflect everything that Liam just went over. It would be interesting for the finance committee to maybe look at what type of implications does this have on the budget across the schools, library, and town. I don't know the part-time or how many of the people in the schools are part-time. I know in the library it's significant, even though there's a smaller number of staff. So it'd just be interesting to understand that going into budget.
Yeah.
William, I think, did you do some back of the napkin stuff or?
Yeah, so again, I think I guess what I'd say is that we will be tracking this, and we will report back and can do an interim check of what time has been accrued. We've tried to limit the liability in that this is not something that's payable upon separation. There certainly are some trickier aspects to administering this, in the event of, call firefighters, which theoretically would be eligible. How do you take time off when you work on an on-call basis, things like that. But the back of the napkin, again, in the memo was, potentially 2,500 hours of exposure at the prevailing average hourly rate, which could be, if you plug in $15, I mean, that's probably a quick way to get it. How many people actually use it? I don't know. I guess we're going to find out with the next year of experience.
Yep. Not that I didn't read your memo, Liam. It was just a prompting question.
No. I know that you read it cover to cover, the pack.
Twice.
Yeah, fair enough.
Any other questions or comments? None? Tony, you want to take the vote?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I breaking up? Am I doing okay? Okay, I'm doing all right. Okay. Order number 20004 is an act on the following request pursuant to Title 23 MRSA 3025 and the requirements of Section 4 of Scarborough Street Acceptance Ordinance as recommended by the town engineer for Jasper Street, which is in the Sea Ridge subdivision. Angela, did she hear just for questions? Does anybody have any questions for Angela? I think this is the latest and I think the recent batch. So I think we've asked some pretty common questions. Okay, so I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. That was unanimous.
Item number 9 is non-action items. I see none. Item number 10 is a standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. So please raise your hand if you have something to report. Councilor Katarina?
I will keep this brief. We have a ordinance workshop tomorrow at 4. I have given my fellow ordinance members homework that I expect them to bring to class completed. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're going to start the discussion of the GMO, the growth management ordinance. And we're going to start with a high view discussion. Tom Hall will be involved, as is Karen Martin, Kristen Turner from the school board, and who am I missing, Tom? Oh, Jay Chase. But this is a workshop. Fellow counselors, you're welcome to attend at the beginning. I will do a 3-minute, anyone with public comments, 3 minutes. But other than that, I'm going to keep it strictly with our ordinance committee members. So that's just to let you and the public know.
Thank you.
That's at 4 o'clock, in case I didn't say that.
4 o'clock. Councilor Hamel, I believe you had your hand raised.
Yes, just an Appointments and Negotiations Committee postscript. I forgot to thank my fellow committee members, Ken Johnson and Betsy Gleistein, for all of their work with the appointments. I had this bad habit of not mentioning them and thanking them. So thanks to you folks for that.
Thank you. Any others? Counselor Anderson?
Just for the Board of Education, I think everybody might know that Sandy is planning to retire. And so they formed a small committee to just kind of revisit the process for how they're going to go through the superintendent search process. So that's underway. They did inquire, what level would the council want to participate in that process. So if anybody has any interest or specific opinion about participating, I believe Tom does participate in the interview process as it goes further through. So if anybody's interested, let me know and I can bring that back. And then in terms of the library, the building committee within the library met, and they're looking for anything from the council that we might have questions on, and potentially come to us this quarter or sometime soon to kind of give an update on the library expansion plans. So if anybody has anything specifically that they would like them to come prepared with to talk to us or send us in advance, just let me know.
Thank you, John. I have a couple library things I'll give you a call or email you. Any others? Okay, mine is, Tom mentioned this at the top of the meeting, but it's worth repeating. Actually, he did not mention we have the marijuana workshop on the 20th. I am starting that at 5:30. That gives us an hour and a half. I realize that's long, but I've reached the person. There will be 3 abutters at the meeting, and there will also be 2 growers at the meeting, which will also include us. And I suspect that Mr. Gallagher will will kick off the meeting. This is the first time I've said it, but I'm assuming he knows. He'll kick off the meeting with a status update. And it's, I'm hoping that we can work together collaboratively with some growers and some abutters to come up with, hey, what are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities? And what are some of the possible solutions? So with everybody I've personally been in contact with, I've made it pretty clear that, we're here to work through it together, and not necessarily air grievances, so to speak, where, we need solutions and some positive and negative feedback and take it from there. So, and I think people will be impressed with what Liam presents us as far as the efforts that the town and the staff has taken to reach out to abutters and residents to help with the process of any sort of concerns they might have. Secondly, this is what Tom mentioned. Don't forget, we have our goals workshop at on January 16th, Saturday morning at 9 a.m., probably all virtual. And the only thing I would like to add to that is and I don't do this very often. Don Hamill is much better than me to do this, but we are now in the middle of a charter review committee, a downtown review committee in the GMO. And I don't publicly support staff probably enough, but I think it's fair to say these are 3 massive undertakings. So I guess I'm just asking everybody here to be mindful of that. So if you have a bee in your bonnet about something silly, please, maybe come to me first. I know I don't have all the answers, but let's just all realize what we're up against. I think we can all agree without any distractions, we're already overwhelmed, right? So let's just all help each other get through that. Unless we want, 5 new position budget requests from Tom in a couple of months. So, and we know how that will go over. So I just wanted to vocalize that publicly. I don't do it enough. It's not just a thank you, but it's a asking of my fellow counselors. We need to all consider that moving forward for the next 2-3 months.
Paul, thank you for saying that, because I know I've had a lot of discussions. I've been in discussions like with Jay, for example, and they're just been out straight, like just with planning board stuff. So yeah, anything we can do to be supportive of staff and be mindful of the time that we're asking them. And also remember, technically, we're supposed to go through the town manager and not go directly to staff. And I think people forget that sometimes, or talk to Paul, who will go through Tom or whatnot. So just be mindful of that. Thank you.
And no, I wasn't suggesting anything there. I mean, on our end, we just need to, keep that.
No, it's good. It is good to be mindful and
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
thank them because
Yeah,
they
I
work
know,
really
absolutely.
hard.
Yeah.
And they're at work. Remember, they're working on these COVID restrictions like we are. So, you
Yep.
know.
Totally agree, Jean Marie. Totally agree. Item number 11 is counselor comments. So if anybody has any final comments, if you'd like to raise your hand. There are none. So and finally, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
And Tony?
Counselor Clucci,
yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes,
Unanimous. Thank you.
as promised.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good
Good night.
Good night.